This weekend will see the final 2 days of 2023, and any tournaments happening will fully count as events for the 2024 ranking season. But there are 2 big tournaments happening over this weekend to close out our 2023, and in today's video I'll be talking about both of them. Who are the top seeds, who should you watch out for, and mostly just spreading awareness that these tournaments exist. The 2 tourneys I'm talking about today are Seibugeki 16 in Japan and Snowball Smashout in St. Louis, Missouri. To be honest with you all, yesterday I spent a combined 16 hours total on that video, from waking up at 6 AM to uploading it at 10 PM. So firstly, go watch it if you haven't already, and secondly, I'm definitely doing an easier video topic today. I hope that's alright with you guys. Just a reminder before we begin that if you want to support me monetarily, you can do so by using links to my Patreon or channel memberships in the description below. With that out of the way, let's get started by taking a look at Seibugeki 16. Even though these 2 tournaments actually have a similar number of entrants, Seibugeki 16 will likely be counted at least as a regional, while Snowball Smashout isn't even technically a C tier yet. Why is this? Well, because Japan, that's why. But either way, let's get started by looking at our top 8 seeds. Oh, and by the way, I'll be linking both of the seeding graphics that I'm using in the description below, from Pupa and Deathspade respectively. Go check them out and follow them. Alright, now let's get started. The top seeds of Seibugeki 16 from the top down goes Yamanaction, Jagaimo, Motsunabe, Tamapi Daifuku, Aegis, Noi, Huto, and Akikikusu. Now, a few of these players are standard picks that I don't have to say much about, but some of them are rising stars that I want to go a little bit more in depth about. Of these players, Yamanaction, Jagaimo, Motsunabe, the top 3 seeds, as well as Noi are all generally considered top-ish players in Japan, so their seeding makes sense. Yamanaction, especially after placing 3rd at the last Seibugeki, definitely deserves this spot here as the 1st seed. The dedicated viewers among you all may be excited to see Tamabi Daifuku here as the 4th seed, after his spectacular 2nd place finish at Delta 7. In that video, I compared Tama to Hurt, and this tournament will be the deciding factor to see if, just like Hurt did, Tama will solidify their spot as a new Japanese top player, or if the Delta 7 run was a one-hit wonder. The other top 8 finisher from Delta 7 in this top 8 seeding is Huto, the Wario main, who actually has to beat top Japanese Olimar main not named Shuton, Uwame, to make top 8. I'm actually interested to see if that top 8 qualifier will go the other way, but we'll cover that later. The other players rounding out this top 8 seeding are Aegis and Akikikusu. Akikikusu is the hero player who's been rising and rising ever higher in Japan, and even went Game 5 with Mia at Delta 7, something I missed when I made that video. Akikikusu has a real potential to go far beyond his seeding at this tournament, and if that happens, I'm excited for the Akikikusu versus Beast Mode Paul debate that will no doubt arise. The other player is Aegis, who, just a few Seibugekis ago, I was describing as a breakout star that came out of nowhere and shook the Japanese scene. It's honestly quite heartwarming to see how far he's come in such a short time, but Aegis has been cemented as one of the best Terries worldwide, and I'll always find myself rooting for him to succeed. Now let's take a look at some of the top 8 threats that are looming just below the surface. Of the 9th place finisher range, I think all of them could make an upset to make top 8. There's Uwame, who I touched on earlier, who has to beat Gichipi and Huto to make top 8. I think this is very possible, especially if Gichipi ends up going Sonic, as Uwame has proven his skill against top Sonic players like Taikei before. Against Gichipi's Lucario, it's a bit more up in the air. However, Olimar is pretty good versus Wario, relatively speaking anyways, so watch for Uwame to make a big run. For the other 9th place seeds, Takara has to beat Noi, Chicken has to beat Akikikusu, and Kept has to beat Aegis. All of these are very possible, the most likely one to happen probably being Takara versus Noi. But for my money, I actually think some of the players in the 13th place range have a really good shot as well. For my last few comments on Seibugeki 16, here are my picks for players that you need to be keeping your eye on going into the tournament. First off, we have Fui and Oi George, who are both seeded to place 13th. Oi George is an online Min main who I've been waiting to have an offline breakout for a long time now. You might not want to watch Min, but I know that I definitely will be watching Oi George's run with great interest, to see if this weekend is finally the weekend that Oi George breaks out like I've been wanting him to. Fui is the Yoshi main who stunned the world at Wave Champion 6, placing 2nd and even resetting the bracket in Grands versus Ken. With some pretty good placements after that, Fui is truly in the midst of a meteoric rise, and I think that Fui will likely go farther than he's seeded to, as long as he beats Matara. Matara is someone I haven't seen play since the Chinese tournament Pearl 2, but Matara got a great win over Neo in his prime at that very tournament. With this being the first time since then that I've seen Matara, I really hope he does well, maybe making enough upsets to not cross paths with Fui, as I really want both of them to succeed, but as of right now, they're seeded to fight each other in losers. And the last two players I have for you are Leaf and Yuzu. Both of them are players that I've become very acquainted with thanks to my coverage of the Wave Champions series of tournaments, where the two of them have been top 8 mainstays. Leaf is the world's best Robin, and Yuzu is likely the best Rosalina not named Dabuz. But I mean, if Dabuz truly commits to Steve in 2024, maybe Yuzu will take the title of Best Rosalina worldwide, starting with Seibugeki 16. That about wraps it up for what I want to mention about Seibugeki. Now let's move to the other side of the globe and take a look at Snowball Smashout in St. Louis, Missouri. Snowball Smashout includes some of the best players in the Midwest, mostly from Kansas and Missouri, but with some other invaders. Also, there are a lot of Kansas City players here, so yes, get ready for me to nerd out over every single one of them. Firstly, it's important to mention one tiny little oddity, Apollo Kage, who probably would have been the first seed if he had signed up normally, but since he was added as a last-minute addition, AK was added as the 4th seed purely to avoid conflicts. So when you look at the bracket, which is linked in the description by the way, and see AK seeded 4th, don't get up in arms about it. The top 8 seeds, going from the top to bottom, are Rocky, Walk Don't Run, aka God I Miss Her, aka Casimir, which is probably the name you're most likely to know this player by, Deathspade, Apollo Kage, Comet, Justin23, Henry Luma, Ploopy. Of this top 8, half of them are from Kansas City, including the top seed, Rocky. So yeah, you could say that I'm a bit proud of my region. However, I do have to mention that there are some concerns that could mess up some of our KC boyos. Rocky is seeded to fight Apollo Kage in winter semis, and no matter how that matchup actually is, all that's important is that Rocky hates fighting Snake. Now, I would never go so far as to say that Rocky will lose. I'm too biased towards my home region for that. I'm just saying that Rocky's gotta be at the top of his game to avoid this upset. Well, technically an upset, I guess. The other thing to mention is that in order to make top 8, Ploopy has to defeat Colorado 8 in losers. And while, yes, Ploopy did beat Colorado 8 at Fighting Ghosts, he lost the run back in losers semis. So again, not saying Ploopy will lose, but he'll have to be careful. Oh, but also, Ploopy is seeded to lose to Casimir in winners quarters. Me, personally, I think Ploopy actually has a good chance to pull off the upset here over Casimir, and I'm not just speaking from my bias on this one. One of KC's top players is Toffee, who mains Mega Man and who has fought Ploopy very often, although a lot of times with Marth. But Ploopy should have sufficient Mega Man experience, and given that this matchup can't possibly be good for Mega Man, I think the upset is quite possible. The last thing I have to mention is that Deathspade and AK are seeded to fight in loser semis. Now, the uninitiated among you may not think anything of this. I mean, AK is a top US player, and Snake is actually really bad for Bayo, right? Well, wrong, because Bayo has actually defeated Apollo Kage multiple times. And while AK is up lifetime over Deathspade, a lot of AK's wins are from the earlier days of the game. Recently, their set counts have been back and forth like crazy. I personally think Deathspade will beat Apollo Kage if that set ends up happening, but honestly, I think you should just watch this set because no matter who wins, it's guaranteed to be a banger. Now let's go over some top 8 threats that I think you should look out for. I would love to say that Colorado 8 could make top 8, but unfortunately his bracket path is Globo into Ploopy. I don't know what Lovecraftian entity that C8 angered, but he has to defeat 2 of the best Game & Watches in the Midwest to even make it into top 8. I just kind of feel bad about it actually. C8 is a cool guy, what did he do to deserve this? But let's look on the bright side for a moment. If C8 does indeed beat Globo as seeded, there is literally no better matchup practice that he could have asked for in order to deal with Ploopy. It could be the warm-up that C8 needs to make the upset, but again, a lot of this depends on if Ploopy even drops to losers to begin with. I'm gonna go ahead and mention 3 more players, all of which are from around the Missouri area: Tim Prater, Zefty, and Solarose. Tim plays Mewtwo and has a good chance to go deep in bracket as long as he can make a good upset versus Artis and then defeat Henry Luma, which yes, is definitely a big ask, but more than possible given that they're in the same region. Zefty definitely has a much lower seed, but I've seen what Zefty can do and have faith that a few upsets can indeed be made. And speaking of Zelda mains, we have Solarose. Yeah, there's 2 Zelda mains, both of whom are top Zeldas in the Midwest. If you ever want to compete in Missouri, you better know the Zelda matchup. But anyways, she definitely has the potential to go deeper in bracket given how volatile Zelda can be. The main problem in her way is Globo. And the last 3 players I want to cover are Morley, Isaiah, and Silsey. Morley seems really underseeded to me, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not really sure what else to say about it, to be honest. I just think he's underseeded. Isaiah is from Kansas City, so, you know, I'm biased, but I'll never not have faith in my KC boyos. And lastly, we have the Prince of Como himself, Silsey, who could absolutely make an upset or two. And honestly, call me crazy, but Silsey could low-key get really close to top 8. The biggest obstacle is Comet in the loser's top 8 qualifier, which is definitely not good odds for Silsey, but honestly, I think it would be pretty funny if Silsey makes top 8. That about wraps it up for today's video. The world of Smash is large, as we all know, and this weekend we'll be seeing 2 tournaments on the opposite ends of the world both go down. And while the attention of the community at large will no doubt be more focused on Seibugeki 16, I would recommend that you catch both tournaments if you can. And I'm definitely not just saying that because I want people to see the KC players dominate. Not at all. Either way, while the 2023 ranking season is already finished, the actual year of 2023 is going out with a bang in the world of Smash, sending us off with these 2 big tournaments to hopefully close out this year on a great note and start 2024 off with a bang. That's going to be it for today's video. Before I go, shout out to my patrons Seth Laster, Frosco333, and my tier 2 patrons Iltis and Diamond Blaze. Additionally, shout out my YouTube members Stormtrooper, Loco Soco, Diarrhea, DJR Jr., Defective, Orangabang, Fan of, and my tier 2 members Mike G and Wu-Tang Forever. Additionally, extra special shout out goes to my tier 3 patron Ocean Man, who says, RisterMice is sorry for playing Min Min. If you want to support me using any of these methods, links are in the description below. Don't miss the streams and shorts I'm producing over the weekend, but until then, I've been RisterMice, and thank you all so much for watching.